Speaking to values, one of the first values that come to mind is oftentimes you can find more amenities in a multifamily environment. A swimming pool, a workout area, tennis court, which you might not have when you buy a single-family home.
Of course, one thing that rentals does give you the ability to do, if you really think about a strategy now and not just rent the most expensive property that you can find in the marketplace, is it does give you a chance to save money for a down payment.
So, Jerry, as we think it through, there are a number of items that you might want to think about before you say, I've got to buy. There could be some real distinct advantages to renting.
The decision of buying versus renting is really not only a financial decision, but also a lifestyle decision. So think in terms of lifestyle and financial when you're trying to make the decision to rent or buy.
You know, Jerry, while we're talking about rental strategies and that renting could make some sense, what kind of strategy could you have to save money when you rent? Are there some things that you could think about before you go out and rent an apartment or rent a home?
Well, of course, saving money while you're renting is a catch-22 because for most people, they can't afford to buy a home. So because they cannot afford to buy a home, they rent, and they can't afford to save money for a home because they're renting. So the catch-22 is there. But there are some strategies that one could implement to save money while you're renting. Possibly if you're going to rent an apartment or a home, talk to that landlord about taking it as is. You know, we hear that phrase, as is. Move in as is. You do the painting, you do the decorating, you do the cleanup, and possibly you can save a little bit of money on that apartment.
Something that most renters don't even think about is they fail to negotiate with their potential landlord. They forget or don't think to ask for free rent. They don't ask for the items that you might normally ask for in a normal business transaction. They just accept the stated rent for the terms and conditions which are given by the lessor. And in many occasions, you should say, wait a second, let me go in there and see if I can negotiate a better proposal than what's being offered to me.
A friend of mine, Mike, wanted to sign a one-year lease on an apartment house, and he offered the landlord 10 months rent up front. In other words, he said, I will write you a check today for 10 months rent in advance, but I want the lease to be for 12 months. The landlord looked at that big check, couldn't resist the money, took the 10 months rent up front, and my friend got an apartment for 12 months.
And now your friend had 2 months' rents, which could go towards his savings to eventually buy his home.
That's exactly right. Is there any way, though, Mike, that we could put a hybrid together of, let's talk single-family homes for a minute, a hybrid of a lease and the purchase? I mean, some of my friends call me and ask about a lease purchase. What is your familiarity with that?
I think a lease purchase provides many benefits and many advantages to both the seller or the owner of the home as well as the renter. For example, the first one that comes to mind is the seller might not be prepared to sell today, but there might be some tax advantages for maintaining the house. There might be some advantages to keeping the house for another year, another 2 years, and he might not want to sell. Oftentimes on a lease purchase, you think that all the opportunities and all the advantages are to the lessee. That's not the case. There could be some distinct tax advantages to the lessor or the owner of the home.
There are a couple reasons that a lease purchase might make sense from a tenant side, Mike. And we talk in terms of a lease purchase. That simply means that you lease the property for a period of time, usually a single-family home, with either the option to buy or you're locked into buying it. And really what you're doing is buying yourself some time.
You know, another distinct advantage is that the market is still moving up. The values are still increasing at 8-10% a year. And you might make the decision, let me go ahead and rent this property for the next 12 to 18 months to take advantage of the increased values that could be realized, and then place the home on the market for sale after you think you've realized as much value as you can within the next reasonable period of time.
Or on the other hand, maybe the values aren't going up at all, as is true in certain regions of the country right now, and maybe you should lease the property and wait on that downtime to go through. I know that a friend of mine right now is out looking in the Tulsa, Oklahoma area for property because homes right now in Tulsa, Oklahoma are very inexpensive. And compared to where they live in Chicago, they're bargains.
One additional reason for exercising the lease purchase is waiting for interest rates to come down. You might be in a period of where interest rates are higher than 10 or 11% or whatever you might consider to be an acceptable interest rate range. You might make the decision to wait for interest rates to fall, that today is not the day to close on a new first mortgage if the interest rates are unacceptable, and you'll enter into a lease purchase. And the lease purchase might read that when interest rates fall below a certain threshold, then you'll go ahead and exercise the right to close on the sale. The hybrid lease purchase is another alternative besides just straight renting or straight owning. It's another consideration that you might think about before you make that final major financial decision as to when and where to buy a home.
But for most people, Mike, buying a home is still the best financial investment they will ever make.
You know, when you say that, I agree with you, but also I think of some advantages and disadvantages of home ownership.
Well, the advantages we read about in the newspaper all the time, and we talk about it a lot. It is a big economic decision, but certainly advantageous.